Awesome. Then you had the P for paper, I think was the
I
last.
added the P because when you're forecasting, how many times are you someone's forecasting a brand new deal, excuse me. And there's 4 weeks to go in the quarter or 5 weeks, even 6 weeks to go in the quarter. And you say, that's great. We've never done business with this company before. Talk to me about what their signature process is or approval process or paper process. And they don't know. So you got to take it off the forecast, because if you don't know, how do you know it's not 8 weeks? How do you know it doesn't sit in with their legal team for 4 weeks, and they're going over T's and C's? How many people are involved in this process? How long does each person sit on the paperwork? Is anybody going on vacation when we're trying to get this deal? And how are we going to get to them? And who's going to approve it if they're gone? So when you couldn't ask those questions, you needed to add a P if you really wanted to qualify whether or not only if you were going to get the deal, but also whether or not you could forecast the deal.
Yep. Totally.
Right. And everybody knows the longer that you leave a deal out there and you don't know the paper process, and the competition knows that you basically won the deal because they get told by their champion. Now that deal's in jeopardy, right? Every day that goes by, they could try something to, steal that deal.
Yeah. Amazing. The, kind of moving on around the topic of sloppiness of sales these days. I know we both have several pet peeves, but one of mine, dovetailing with what you just said in terms of, what's going to happen to get the deal done. I've got clients all the time, and was talking to one yesterday. I say, okay, there should be a note that goes to whatever the executive is, especially if I did an executive intro to say the CRO or CEO or whoever, that I can send that says, okay, thanks for your help with the introduction. We've been doing great with Susie, Sally, and Harry. As a reminder, here's kind of what we do. Here's, where the team is at. We did the POC. Here's the results. Looks like there's going to be an order coming, and we understand the process to be whatever it's going to go for internal committee approval, or you sign off or whatever. And here's the time frame. And obviously we're hoping to get this done, by the end of the month, kind of, and there's probably some other things in there, kind of that whole kind of summary. Yeah. I say, you can't do that, then there's really no deal. But go back like 20 years ago, people would do that in their sleep. And now that just seems to have kind of totally fallen off. Do you see that?
Well, I used to ask the question, if somebody would put up like a deal for $500,000, I would say, well, who else at their company actually knows they're going to buy $500,000 of software besides us, right? So,
Yeah.
Meaning they didn't do all the things that you just talked about. Does anybody else know about this deal besides us?
Yeah, just amazing. So for those watching along, you can see us or hear us. We cannot see you, but through LinkedIn on the app there, you can feel free to make any comments or post any questions. We've got Tucker behind the scenes to pull those up for us. So feel free to ask or say anything there. And we've got the legendary John McMahon here, which is fantastic. So John, any other kind of pet peeves that you have or sloppiness that you see in sales these days?
I don't know that it's any different these days than it is, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It's just that a lot of times people just want to take a shortcut, and there really aren't a lot of shortcuts. And if you don't spend, at the end of the day, it really comes down to, I got to get a champion. And the reason I got to get a champion is because I have to get if I want to get big deals, right? I have to get a champion. The reason I have to get a champion is because they can help me control the criteria and the process. And then that champion can truly help me get to the economic buyer who has discretionary use of the funds. And then that person can help, generate a very large purchase order. So if we work backwards from that, the only way you're going to get a champion is to slow down the beginning part of the sales process. And that means that you have to do proper discovery of pain, and then proper quantification of pain and the before scenario, and then what could be like the after scenario. Because these champions are really smart. They're very cagey. If you think about a champion, they have influence in the account. That influence allows them to get to, even if they're 4 or 5 layers down, to get to the economic buyer. So they have a reputation in the account, and they're not going to blow it on a salesperson that's taking shortcuts and is just talking about a deal, but really not doing a lot of investigation as to the pain that the company has and why that it's paramount that they go ahead and fix that pain. You have a real solution, a real value that you bring to the company. So you think about that. And now the reason that sometimes that doesn't work is if you're working for a leader that is purely activity based, there's a discrepancy there because they're telling you, go get more meetings, go send more emails, go send more LinkedIn connections, go send more of this and that. It's purely activity based. So then what happens is the poor salespeople that haven't been around, they go ahead and do that activity. So they get a meeting and then they are happy they get the meeting and the manager checks off, yeah, you got a meeting, but it doesn't really go anywhere because the meeting a lot of times is too low level. So
Right.
play out, in those low levels, and later on they figure out that the competition is much higher in the organization than they are. So there's nothing wrong with activity, but activity has to generate accomplishment. So, and the accomplishment has to be that you've done the right things to allow you to go ahead and get a champion, and for all the reasons that we just talked about. So you got to put the work in up front. A lot of times people don't want to put the work up front. They just I want to get in the account. I want to get a connection. Somebody that'll say yes to me. And then I want to go give them a demo and I want to hope that they'll buy without knowing anything about the company, without knowing anything about the use case and the product and the pains that company's facing. You might be just talking to the wrong person.
That's crazy. It's kind of like you're on a, if you want to go 100 yards, is it easier to do it on a treadmill or off the treadmill and just going forward?
It's like ice hockey, you're taking a lot of shots at the net, but nothing's going in. So you have to start to figure out, does my coach want me to just take shots or do they want me to put the puck in the net?
Yeah.
We have to start to figure out why is the person or the sales rep not accomplishing what they need to accomplish. And I think a lot of managers don't really dissect what knowledge their rep is missing or what skill they're missing. So if you think about it, it's like a sports analogy. If I'm a hockey player and I'm passing to my teammate and they're missing the pass or they're in the wrong position, then you have to ask why. Do they not have knowledge of where they're supposed to be on the play, or they just don't have the skill set to execute the play? And when you think about a sales process, it's really no different. It's like a playbook. So there's stages of a sales process and then there's steps inside those stages. And for every single step or every single stage, there's knowledge that has to be known and there's a skill that has to be developed so that your salesperson can execute that play flawlessly, because everything's basically a play.
Absolutely. And talking about champion, I always found over the years, the senior level executives, the C-suite, they got promoted into those roles because generally speaking, they're good people. They understand business. They're fair. So I always found it easier selling to the C-suite. You still need to cover your bases at the lower level. A lot of times those lower level people are stuck there because they don't have those attributes.
And they don't really understand the true strategic initiatives of the company.
Right.
And what the C-level is really trying to execute. So they want it. They're kind of like wannabes, but they don't really understand. And it doesn't mean you can't go get deals, but you're going to get really small deals, small change, pocket change.
Totally.
You're not going to get big deals.
Yeah. So Tucker has in our chat here that I guess some of the questions aren't populating. So I'm just going to read it here from our chat. So from Roy Carmel, who
I know Roy. Roy.
And they've got a fantastic company going these days as well. But anyway, so question is, would be great to hear, why do you think we see medic theaters where people check the boxes but are missing the point? So I guess the question, if I try and interpret, would be people kind of checking the boxes and metric, but aren't maybe really kind of leaning in and kind of, breathing it and understanding it.
I don't think it's any different than what I said. You have some lazy managers or managers that truly don't understand, and they don't really ask the second, third, fourth, fifth question to understand why their rep, again, it comes down to knowledge and skills because it's a play. What knowledge is my rep missing, and what skill set are they missing to execute the play? And then they don't train their people. So if they find out that a number of their reps just can't get champions. Well, why is that? And you have to go deep and figure out, why is it that my reps have a really difficult time finding champions, and what knowledge are they missing? What skill set are they missing? And I got to start to train them on that. So it's either that the managers know and are lazy and don't train the reps, or they actually simply don't know themselves. And then medic and these qualification methodologies, because medic's not a sales process, it just becomes a checkbox. So they're kind of fooling themselves. They're not really using a qualification methodology.
Yeah, totally. Thanks, Roy. And from Brian Montoya, shout out to John McMahon. Learned about him after having Adam Aarons on my podcast in 2022. I'm also really enjoying the internal dialogue in italics in Qualified Sales Leader. My question, Tucker, do we have what his question is here? Or did that get cut out? All right. Sorry, Brian. I think that got cut out. So feel free to come back in, or if you want, you can even text me. For some reason, it's not.
So while they're doing that, I mean, what a manager wants to do, and if you're a rep, what you really want to concentrate on is accomplishment. So you want to concentrate on deal advancement, right? So based upon what I'm going to do today, when I go into this call, what do I think I'm going to execute? And did I advance the deal? And you have to have certain criteria that tells you that you advanced that deal, right? And if you're just doing activity for activity's sake, but you're not truly measuring deal advancement, then I think you're kind of kidding yourself. And again, a lot of people don't want to really slow down in the beginning of the process in discovery and quantification, or scoping, it might be called by a lot of people, to really understand the customer, the use case, the persona, who owns the use case, how is that person measured? How is that person paid? How are they bonused? Because then you'll know exactly who to sell to once you figure that out.